I thought I would take a half an hour to try to describe the horrible crime that was visited upon me. The series of tortures and ordeals like the film Deliverance, which were organized by masters of crime working with Hollywood. Indeed, whoever the registered nurse was, the unidentified registered nurse of Harborview Medical Center in Seattle, who the state issued a healthcare investigation of in 2007, is no less an assassin than any killer of a public figure. The Tylenol he gave me led to erectile dysfunction, diabetes, Parkinson's, now complications internally. The way this was organized was as a symposium on pleasure and pain. Just as there's an axis of colonialism and an axis of resistance, Paul McCartney has a band called Wings. The idea that they cooperated is easy to establish. Pittsburgh and Seattle worked with the right wing on the AIDS attack and covered for them, but not very effectively. They apparently want the story to get around. What they did was that the right wing took care of the barbarism, brutality, poison, sadism, and cruelty. And the left wing took care of the attack, prostitutions, and slander. It was sort of a hot-cold approach to serial mutilation. When I complained that I had been tortured, China intoned that they would have no time to negotiate between the Arabs and blacks of Sudan if they noticed something like that. And Britain said, we won't have time for the large war game of investigating John Lennon's Houdini if we go along with Craig's attempts to warn and protect the AIDS victims and the at risk. The Catholic Church just foreclosed on lawyers, newspapers, locals, administrators in college, and said we'll just have a discussion about whose victimization is worse than whose. And this is how it was planned, and this is how it went. A woman in Massachusetts who had an academic quarterly in which deaf people were invited to provide poems didn't tell me that I hadn't been chosen well past the deadline for telling the other writers, and she said laconically, even though I had written to her a few times, as though from far away, I wonder why nobody told you. So even one of the crimes that was committed would be a gossip piece anywhere that respected distinguished citizens of Poplar Bluff, Missouri, being trafficked by the Neva Pornographic Corporation as a grade school child would be a serious offense. Being deafened as a symbol of Hiroshima would be a terrible foreign attack on the American boy. Being force-fed a nerve agent by a prison psychiatrist would be a terrible crime. Being kidnapped and stolen cars by an armed gang of brutal molesters would be a terrible offense. Being attacked by attack prostitutes to detonate the neuroplasm would be a terrible offense. To be set up in a pussy ball operation clocked to the AIDS attack would be a terrible offense. To being lied about so the perpetrators of the AIDS attack could get away scot-free would be a terrible offense. Yet all of these combined mean nothing to McCartney's women, who look askance at me as though I have embarrassed them for pointing out that there was never any trial, never evidence of wrongdoing, when they just simply set out and castrated me for the hell of it. And the imprint of this bears the name Hirono. They've killed bystanders. They've littered the public domain with their sadistic counterclaims. It's a farce to put on. A prolonged and diabolical con job by both Russia and the United States, being maneuvered behind the scenes by their mutual ally, Nosferatu. And of course, the United Nations provided Midori Goto's services as the Pussy Ball Queen and so-called peace ambassador to the United Nations while this was going on. It was a revenge attack. It was a revenge attack that found the Japanese figure skater elevated to victory in third place at the Beijing Olympics to symbolize the script of Gail Burstyn being a war game to fulfill the outcome of revenge over Hiroshima in World War III. And this is a sort of ghoulish thing that we have going on in this day and age under Toon. I did, of course, investigate, but this was put aside as not an important investigation compared to libels about John Lennon. So there you have the situation. It's a crank wheel, and it's very sad. Then you can't count on anybody. You know, you would wish you could count on Greta Thunberg, but she was promoted by Schwarzenegger, who was behind a lot of this. Toon and Hirono have a convenient forklift of an Oliver Stone sort of dimension, in that I was very taken in by a 12-year-old Gaza poet who I admire very, very deeply. But of course, one of the authors of the script was the Arabian priesthood of theologians in the Muslim quarters. Foucault met with the Ayatollah when this was all beginning, and then he was a suicide bomber in the AIDS attack. But he took, with the help of Noam Chomsky, Seattle's left gullibles with him, and they played their axis of resistance role, wriggling the parochial finger of the Pope in the name of Freddie Mercury at a child who'd been battered over and over again, who did nothing but mean well by them. Nothing but mean well by them. And they refused to acknowledge. They didn't have the courtesy to say thank you. They're too filled with hate because they've been convinced by Hirono that hate is top sacredly love. And they've built a machine situation here in Tacoma that advertises an Axis nuclear revenge attack against their own children and say, oh, that's love. The laconic woman who waited forever to tell me that my poem was not going to be chosen meant just to hang dog, just bluesy way that you pulled this.